A new account of Roman history, like that recounted by Anchises in Elysium, appears in Book 8. When Aeneas is preparing to make war on Turnus and the tribes of Latium, his mother Venus asks the god Vulcan to forge new arms for him. A long description is given of the magnificent weapons and especially of the shield on which are engraved numerous scenes from Roman history. Here again, the same double perspective of past and future appears as before. On the one hand, the Roman reader in the present would be familiar with the events portrayed since they have already happened. But on the other hand, from the perspective of Aeneas, all of this lies in the future, and he can only guess at the full meaning of the images. This device thus serves the same kind of purpose as before. It can be read as a self-congratulatory praise for the Roman people and its achievements by the contemporary reader, while at the same time it serves a function in the story by vindicating the great sacrifices that Aeneas must make. While, as before, there are different scenes from Roman history, the centerpiece concerns Augustus Caesar. Specifically, the shield portrays the Battle of Actium, which was the final event in the civil wars which resulted in Augustus assuming absolute power in the Roman world, thus marking the end of the Roman Republic and the beginning of the empire. This sea battle took place off the coast of Africa in 31 BC. Augustus, then still known as Octavian, defeated the forces of Mark Antony and the Egyptian queen Cleopatra. Since this was a civil war, it was a sensitive matter. Many Romans had fought and died on the side of Mark Antony, and their relatives were still alive and living under the Emperor Augustus. In Virgil's description of the shield, this is in a sense depicted not as a civil war, but as a war of Rome against a foreign power. Thus, it's written, quote, "On the one side was Augustus Caesar, leading the men of Italy into battle alongside the Senate and the people of Rome, its gods of home and its great gods." Octavian is thus seen to be acting on behalf of the Roman people and its rightful government. Like Aeneas, he's portrayed as pious, defending the gods of Rome. By contrast, the forces allied under Antony are portrayed as foreigners from Asia. Quote, "On the other side, with the wealth of the barbarian world and warriors in all kinds of different armor, came Antony in triumph from the shores of the Red Sea and the peoples of the dawn. With him sailed Egypt and the power of the East." End quote. In order to gain public support for the war in Rome, Octavian made use of an effective propaganda campaign that portrayed Antony as a traitor who had sold out Rome to the Egyptian queen Cleopatra. This is mentioned critically by Virgil in his description of the shield. The battle is presented not just as a human conflict, but also as involving the divine. The Egyptian gods were thus pitted against the Roman ones. Quote, "Anubis barked, and all manner of monstrous gods leveled their weapons at Neptune and Venus and Minerva." So Octavian is seen to be fighting with and for the Roman gods. While the Roman gods are very much like humans, the Eastern gods are referred to as monstrous. Mention is made of the Egyptian god Anubis, who has the head of a dog. Octavian's piety is further emphasized when he's portrayed back in Rome at his triumph after the battle. There he consecrates no less than 300 new shrines and temples to the gods of the city. Here we can see again the motif of the West or Europe versus the East. In this case, united under the aegis of an African kingdom. This motif was central to the Iliad and Herodotus' account of the Persian Wars. Virgil draws on this tradition in order to emphasize Roman values and civilization in contrast to what is regarded as the barbarism of the East. At the end of the description of the shield, a list is given of the people conquered by the Romans who have now become a part of their massive empire. Many of these come from the East. The pathos of the episode with the shield comes out at the end, where Aeneas' reaction to the images is described. In the final sentence of Book 8, we read, quote, "Marveling at it and rejoicing at the things pictured on it, without knowing what they were, Aeneas lifted on to his shoulder the fame and fate of his descendants." End quote. By carrying the shield, Aeneas symbolically carries all of the hopes and dreams of Rome with him into battle, just as before he carried his father out of burning Troy along with the gods of the city. The contemporary Roman can read this and can admire the hero for his efforts. However, the key here is that Aeneas himself cannot really understand the meaning of the images on the shield. For him, they clearly represent some important events, but it's impossible for him to know exactly what they signify. But yet, he's still prepared to go into battle for the sake of a future that he does not and cannot fully understand. Here again, he proves worthy of his epithet of pious Aeneas, since he sacrifices his own personal interests and desires for the glory of his family and people in the future.